Hello everyone, it's Marjoram of Sage and Marjoram, and I'm back with another video, finally. This video is kind of two-step video. We're gonna first start off with this yarn. I'm gonna show you how I got to this point, and then we're gonna move into a weaving section. I worked on this video for the good part of a month just because I took time to dye. I then had to come up with a weaving pattern. I wove the scarf, and then I got to the end and finished it. So as you can see, I'm starting with my yarn much drier than normal and just dropping things in. So I was trying to recreate my cleanup yarn from January, February, but a bit more curated. So you see I've chosen a couple of specific colors and specific blends. I'm pouring them on as though I was getting rid of extra dye or extra powder. And I started with my yarn very dry so that it would strike unevenly on purpose. And as I'm going through it, I realized, hold on, I had these like in a little bowl off to the side and I was just throwing everything in there. So I just started throwing everything in there. I wanted this to be as authentic as possible. And that means throwing in your containers and letting it sit for a day and slowly bringing up the water line. So maybe every hour and a half, 2 hours, I would come in and just add a little bit more water, add a little bit of citric acid. This was all with no heat. So this was probably after, I want to say 7 or 8 hours. So it's a really slow process. And then here we're looking at it the next morning, before I went in to do my actual heat setting. You can see we're getting some really good and interesting colors. I was inspired again by the palette of Hayao Miyazaki just because the way he sees color is just so stunning to me. And these skeins are not laid out vertically. I think I showed in the very beginning. They're kind of in their own little nest piles, and I've just been moving them around, trying to keep them in a general area. And now we cook. And here's what the skeins look like. I think they came out really well. And it's time to get to work because there is a lot more of this video. So I decided to wind them into balls, and then I went ahead and I used my trusty bobbin winder, which I've been loving, and wound them into a ton of little bobbins. So I got this actually from Fiber Artist Supply Co., which is pretty close to where I live. And it literally is so nice. I was going slow here just so I can show you all. Like, you get a really nice bobbin really quickly. But here I just wanted to look at those colors kind of coming across and how they're coming onto the bobbin, because that will be our weft for this project. So again, I wound up a bunch of these bobbins. I think I did 6 or 7 in the first batch just to make sure that I had enough, because I don't want to stop once I start weaving. And then I got my little bobbin buddy from an amazing ceramic artist, Aloe Frost on Instagram. And I got a new bigger bobbin buddy that's big enough to hold my shuttles as well. So we're working on my Luette Erica, and I'm gonna actually kind of talk through this because it's been a while since I talked through what I was doing. So I've warped up my loom. You can see that I am doing my tensioning right now. I'm just checking to make sure I have no crossed threads by opening each shaft individually. And I'm looking for any crosses. I'm not seeing any. And then I'm gonna go through and check my tabby. Both of them, again, I'm just making sure I have no crossed threads. You can never be too certain because I don't want to get started and then have an issue. So this is some of my waste yarn that I'm using at the start. I'm going through and I'm setting up a header, and I'm trying to do a header that's similar to the one that Laura Fry teaches in a course on the School of Sweet Georgia. First, I'm going to do just a couple passes back and forth, and then I'm going to start looping around my front beam You can see there I'm kind of taking it out past the actual project on either side, and that's just to try to help and keep those outside corners looking sharp in the beginning. Otherwise you get kind of curling when you're starting. And I'm going through and I'm just beading every now and then to try to set those in place. I'm not beading necessarily at every pass of my shuttle. Just trying to get these going and well tensioned. So again, you can see I didn't beat every time there. And I am doing a double right there as well. This is just going to make it easier for me. And I know probably a lot of you all are going to see once I actually get started, this kind of is not entirely necessary. I have mixed opinions on setting up a warp header now. I like it for knowing that I have everything in the right spot, but then I go through and I hem stitch and I end up with little bundles with spaces between them anyways in the end. So I'm trying to figure out what I actually need to do and what is just a nice check in my process. Either way, I'm still doing it for now, but I've got my header done. I did about an inch, maybe a little less than an inch, and now I'm going to go in with my bobbins of my actual weft. You can see that yarn came out so beautifully that we dyed at the beginning of the video. I'm very happy with the coloring. It seems pretty consistent, even though, you know, it was very splattered across. And I think it's going to turn into the most stunning fabric. I'm literally so excited that I am working on this project. So I did a first pass and I'm just showing you all, I left out some yarn that I'm going to be using for my hem stitching. I like to hem stitch now and I don't always twist my fringe, but even if I do twist my fringe, I want to have a hem stitch in place. I just think it looks so clean, and you'll see at the end, the hem stitching on this scarf came out so well. I can't believe it. It literally was so stunning. So what I'm doing now, starting my actual scarf, is I'm going to go in and I'm going to do about an inch of tabby. And I'm beating my tabby a little bit firmer than I normally would because I'm using it as, you know, the bookends of this scarf project. And I really want to have a nice and solid start and end. And we're already starting to see, and I'll show you in a little bit actually, some of the beauty of this yarn. I think you can see too, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but in my warp, I'm using undyed wool, but I have a center stripe of 10 strands of my weft yarn as the warp. And it really does transition. There you can see in the middle there, those dyed warp strings. Yeah, look at that. I really love the pooling that I'm getting going on. It's very random and it's almost like a watercolor. But those center warp strings are for a somewhat undefined stripe. So it's never entirely solid. Like if you would do this with a 2-color piece and you had a center stripe that was the same color as your weft, then you would end up having a solid band down the middle. But because this is such a variegated yarn, I'm going to end up with a really interesting kind of pseudo stripe in the middle. And I've started on my twill. I'm working in a modified M&W pattern. Here I was in fabric printer mode. So I guess I'll talk about what I've been doing. I have been pretty busy. I moved, then had to run right back down and run a quick little workshop. I was able to take my spinning wheel with me, and so I got to do some spinning on my electric eel wheel in my hotel room. It was a nice way to wind down at the end of the day. And I've also been pretty busy at home. I've been rearranging my home office setup. I repaired this loom, and then I also opened a yarn stand at a local market here. It's a pretty interesting market. I'm currently running pop-ups twice a month where I go out and I sell some of my yarn. I've been doing live demos of weaving and spinning, and I even ended up on the news just this past Sunday. They had some film. If I can insert it here, we'll see. but I was spinning on my electric eel wheel and they were showing some of my hand spun and hand dyed yarns, and I got to talk to a lot of interesting people. It was really nice to try to get out there locally. I have a goal of at some point opening some sort of mixed use space here. I'm just trying to get the right space. You find one and you think it's right and then it's gone. So we'll get there eventually. But for now, I've just been enjoying my time home in the cornfields rather than down in the city, and trying to really get back into the swing of creating. I am about to start working on 3 more new yarns, and I also have another project in mind already. And I've been studying as well. I've been looking into 8 shaft patterns because I really want to start getting into more complex patterns. So here you can kind of see the M&W pattern that I'm talking about. That is the draft I'm using, just modified slightly. And now I'm done with this project. So I cut it off the loom and it's time to pull it off. You'll have to forgive me because I work in spare bedrooms rather than, you know, in an actual studio right now. I'm still trying to find that perfect space, but until then, we will make do. And you can already tell probably that this scarf is just stunning. In my opinion, I feel like it came out so well. It came out about 11 inches wide by about 6 feet. That's including the fringe. And I know, knowing this yarn, that it's going to have about 1 inch of draw in on the sides, and then also a little bit of shrinkage on the fringe. Not too much overall though. And that's mostly because of the warp plumping up. It really is going to plump up that undyed yarn. Even though it is superwash and it doesn't necessarily go through the fulling process, it will definitely plump up and help to lock those threads into place during the wet finishing process. And I know that having worked with it and dyed it, it's hard to tell, but there is actually quite a difference between the undyed and the dyed yarn in the warp and also the weft. So you can see it looks pretty thin there, but it's going to really plump up. So I'm very happy with how this came out. I really think it looks like a stunning watercolor. You can kind of see that pseudo stripe down the middle that I was talking about. I love it. It's just like a light shadow, and it stays that way even after the wet finishing. I think that the hem stitching came out really well. It's so stunning. Here you can see one of my favorite sections. I got, you know, one continuous gradient all the way down on that hem stitch. And this almost makes me want to just do like a plain tabby scarf. I haven't done just like a plain tabby on my multi-shaft loom for a long time, but seeing that tabby section there really makes me consider doing it. So yeah, this is the final scarf. I did go ahead and wet finish it. I'm not certain that I got that on film, but I can't show you the scarf anymore because it actually sold immediately before we were even open at the market this past Sunday. I had a lovely visitor come through who clearly knew what she was looking for in her fabrics, and she said she wanted it immediately. And I'm very glad to have sold it, and now I'm going away to keep working on my next projects. As you can see, a little preview in that bottom bobbin there. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for joining me and for waiting for this video to finally come out after I've been gone for so long. I'm really not a YouTuber. I'm a weaver that sometimes posts to YouTube. That's what I'll say, and that's what I'm going to stick with. So again, thank you for watching. You can find me over on Instagram at Sage and Marjoram, or at my website, Sage and Marjoram, to figure out what I'm doing when, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.